Welcome back, Life Science learners. Into our final installment today, we're looking at how to present data, and we've looked at, in the past few segments, we've looked at how we plot a line graph and how we represent information in that. In this segment, we're going to look at pie charts, and we're going to try and apply some of those skills that we've been talking about in trying to draw a line graph and apply the skills that we need to ensure that we get the maximum marks when presenting information in the form of a line graph. So let's look at what a pie chart is. And as I mentioned, a pie chart is an illustration that shows you the proportion of substances or particles or properties that are proportionate to each other. It's often used to show the relationship or the ratios of different quantities in relation to each other. So pie charts often are used for discontinuous variables or data. By that I mean, if you're looking at a set of information that's not related, so the number of people that use a typical type of phone compared to another group of individuals that use a different type of phone. So we want to look at the proportion of individuals using different types of phones. So the one group is not related to the other. And so we illustrate that using a chart that can clearly illustrate the proportions of one group to another or one set of data to another. So it's important for you to have the following. So when preparing to draw a pie chart, you've got to have firstly a calculator. Second, you've got to have a protractor. And it's good to also have a compass to be able to draw a circle. So the three things that you need is a protractor, a calculator, a compass, and most importantly, you're doing it in pencil. Because often if you make a mistake, it's easier for you to erase that off than to restart on a new set of paper because you've used pen. So do it in pencil, get it right, and then you can ink that out if it's an instruction that you have to follow. So let's look at plotting a pie chart. So the first step is that you've got to add up all the data in the table together. In this case, you will add up all the numbers in the number of women column to find out how many women took part in this investigation. So here we have a table that shows the types of contraception or contraceptive methods that we used and the number of women that are using these. And so in this column we've got that there was a group that used sterilization, a group that used the pill, some that preferred to use the condom, some that used the rhythm method, and others that chose to use none. So we've got different contraceptive methods, and so that would be our independent variable. And then we also see a column that shows the number of women that use each of these different types of them, and so this would be the dependent variable. So as I said, the first thing is to find out what is the total number of individuals that have been used in this study, and so it would require that you add these up and you get a total. So I've done that before, and we've got a total of 200. So once you've done that, you now know that the total group that we're looking at is 200. So we've got to illustrate each of these as a proportion. So it's 34 of the 200 women that are now using this specific method of sterilization. What happens next? We then need to convert the data to angles. And you know that in a pie chart, in a circle, we have 360 degrees. So we've got to illustrate each of those. If we go back, we've got to illustrate each of these groups using their numbers as a ratio out of 200, which is then converted to degrees out of 360. So that process needs to be illustrated to you now. So let's go back to that. So, as I mentioned, you've got to convert your data to angles. So essentially in this case, the 200 needs to be converted to 360 degrees. And so you're going to divide each number by 200. Then since there are 360 degrees in a circle, we've got to multiply these by 360 to get that as a proportion out of 360. So the first group that used sterilization were 34, and so we create that as a ratio, and we multiply that by 360, and we get that as a degree or proportionate amount out of 360. So that equates to 61.2 degrees. The best thing when you have degrees is to convert them to the nearest whole number. So in this case, we're going to round it down to 61. The next group used were 38 out of the 200 that chose that specific type of method of contraception, and that gave us a calculation figure of 68.4, and we can see that we rounded that off to the nearest whole number. We also looked at the next group, which was 22. We divided that by 200 and we multiplied that. And so we do this for all. What's important is that we round them down to the nearest whole number so that it does not exceed the total of 360 if we round them up. So as we round them up or down, we ensure that when we total, that the total does not exceed 360. So we've done that, and we've converted the data to angles. The next step is to use your mathematical compass to draw a circle. So again, you're going to have to draw a circle and illustrate that circle, generally using pencil, and then draw the radius from the center. So once you've drawn your circle, identify the center and draw the radius. Okay? So you're going to have to draw the radius as indicated here. Okay? What happens next? You then need to draw in one radius in the circle, and you start at the exact middle of that circle, drawing a line to the edge, as I've indicated here. The next step would be using the protractor, and you need to have one, as I've illustrated here. Measure out the sectors of the pie chart according to the angles you were calculating. So the first would be placing your protractor on this. So I'm going to go back to the value on the previous slide. So we had to measure 61.2 degrees, or in this case 61 degrees. So you would then take your protractor and you would place that on this line, and you would place your protractor there, and you would measure out 61 degrees at that segment there. You would then find the next value, and the next value was 36 if I'm not mistaken, and you would place your protractor on that, and you would measure the next angle. So using a protractor at each of the segments to give you the next segment of the pie chart would be what you need to do for the rest of the values. Okay? When you're done with that, you will label each of the sections of the pie chart with the correct information. In this example, each section should be labeled with the correct contraceptive method used by the woman. Or you could provide a key for the different sections, and I've seen that learners could get creative around different kinds of illustrations that they use. So some learners tend to use circles or highlights, so you could shade out different sections using either crosses, or you can use segments, cross segments, smaller segments, or you could simply label it on here to say, well, in this case I'm going to say condoms, and this was whatever it was, 35%, and I'll illustrate that. So this gives the reader or the person looking at that information an idea as to the different proportions are composed of and by which dependent variable. So give the pie chart a heading or a caption. Remember that both variables should be included in the heading and the caption. In this example, the two variables are the type of contraception method used as well as the number. So if we go back to, let me see if I can get back to the next. So here we look at it. So here it's the pie chart showing the contraceptive used among a sample of women. So it's the different types of contraceptives used amongst a group of women. So that would be the heading, and clearly I've got a key, or I've illustrated the different segments on there clearly so that the reader or the person that's looking at this will have an idea as to which is the larger group, and hence the pie chart makes it a visual representation so that it's easier for us to be able to identify that there's a large percentage of women that are not using any contraceptive, and the least or the smallest group of women choose to use the condom. So again, it makes looking at that information much easier, and you can see the proportionate size or comparisons between different groups in trying to understand which is the most, in this case, the preferred method, or rather not, and the least preferred method by looking at the size of these little segments on the pie chart. So guys, we've looked at how to plot a pie chart. I've got an example of a question here that I've pulled out from an experiment that was conducted at the school that I am in, and I want to look at how and work with this with you together to plot a graph and see how that would be illustrated graphically from a set of data that has been collected. So let's look at this as we end off this segment. So the question is, the table below shows the number of American children between the ages of 2 months and 2 years who have died as a result of being left in a hot car for a minimum of 10 minutes. The data was collected over a period of 2 years. Carefully study the tabulated data given below and then display the data given as a line graph on the graph grid supplied, and this is an 8-mark question. So guys, this information was taken from a study done in America where they noticed that some parents had left their kids in the car to run into a shop, and they collected this data and they realized that, well, you know, the number of kids that have died from a period of being locked up in a car was alarming. And so this data was used just to look at trends in terms of, is this phenomenon happening all the time? And you know, it talks to the behavior of people. So again, information that is presented in the graph showing a trend. So let's look at how that information can be presented and a report can be generated. So here's the table. It shows you the number of deaths, and it shows you, again, due to the process called hyperthermia, which is when the temperature exceeds body temperature. And the ages of the kids that we used were between 2 months and 2 years. So we used a cohort of babies that were between the 2 months and 2 years, and this was done over a 2-year period. And it shows you that it was done in the year 2010 and the year 2011, and it shows you the number of children that died at 38 degrees Celsius, were 3 in 2010 and 4 in 2011, and so on. And if you look at the number of kids that died at when the temperature was 52 was 1 in the year 2010 and 0 in the year 2011. So how does this information, how do we read this information in a way that shows us the trend or the pattern of what has happened? So the best way to do that, again, is to present this from a table onto a graph. So let's get straight into that. So here we have a grid that I've presented to you, and we've got a set of data. So the challenge for us now is to firstly remember the rules that we were using. So let's identify the lowest value, the highest value in the dependent and independent variable. We've got to label the x and y axes. Identifying them first is important. So in this table, let's identify the variables. So we have temperature, which is the independent variable, and we have the number of deaths in the year 2010, and we have the number of the deaths in the year 2011. So we're seeing the trend for 2010, and we're seeing the trend for 2011. Now, what does this mean? When looking at this information, it talks about how the temperature changes. It also talks about how the number of individuals that are dying. So now that we have identified the dependent variable, let's look at our scale. So we've got a scale of the lowest value being 0 and the highest value being 24, if I'm correct. And we've got a scale of temperature between the temperatures of 38 all the way to 52. Now, is it important for us to start from 0? And if you look at that on the x-axis, we would have to start at 0, and it would mean that we would have most of our graph being kind of blank because we don't have a value for it. So we would need to then understand that it's not important for us to start from 0, as we don't have any information on the table for 0 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to identify this as being 37, 30, let me look at that. So we're going to go in So 38 and 52. So if I look at that, if I look at how many blocks I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I think it's reasonable for us to be able to go and use intervals of 5. So I'm going to go and use intervals of 5, and I'm going to start with, let's try and do this. So this is going to be, I'm going to go with this being 35, 40, 45, 50, and 55. So that gives us our scale. That's correct. Remember that we've still got to label this. So this is going to be a label. If I had space on this, I would have put this as temperature. And that would be, the unit would be degrees Celsius. And then on the y-axis, it would be the number of deaths. And I'll illustrate that accordingly. I will then have to illustrate my lowest value, and in this case the number of deaths start from 0 and the highest is 24. So I'm going to go, so probably if I go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. So that would be my scale where I go up in intervals of 2, and I would have to then plot these. But interestingly enough, you've got to remember that when looking at this, you've got 2 sets of lines. So this is going to give you, if I were to quickly plot this before we end, it's going to give you, I'm going to try and do this without having to plot the lines. So it would give you 2 lines, and those lines would show you the trend. It's important that when you have these lines that you label them, in this case the year 2010 or 2011. Notice that I've not plotted these points using the rules. I've just given you a schematic representation of them because we're running out of time, but you're going to have to complete this, and you're welcome to download these notes and the PowerPoints as well as the study notes and use these to complete this activity. Guys, we've done looking at how to present information. We've looked at types of graphs. I've tried to help you in understanding the rules of plotting a graph. We've looked at trying to plot a line graph and a pie chart, and we've attempted to solve a question where we had to present information that was presented in a table into a graphical illustration so that we could see the trend of what happens. So guys, I trust you've engaged, you've enjoyed the lesson, and that you've had a better understanding of how to present data in tables and then illustrating them using graphs. Importantly, being able to identify the type of graph and presenting that correctly. Well done for staying tuned. I wish you well. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.